The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Increase Project Metabolism to Prevent Project Failures. Our guest speaker today is Padma Kumar Menon. He is the Program Manager at Tata Elxsi. Mr. Menon is an IIT Madras postgraduate who has done short-time executive education program for business managers from IIM Bangalore. He has over 2 decades of experience in the IT industry. He has worked in various management positions and delivered consumer electronic software products and services to European, US, and Asian customers. At present, he is working in Tata Elxsi, Bangalore. He is an invited speaker at institutes like BMA PES College BMI Chapter and talks about various management subjects. He has written a book, Ecosystem Management for Career Growth, which talks about human dynamics, perception management, and brand image building inside the IT industry and how managers need to deal with the ecosystem around them, be it boss, peers, team, customers, or suppliers. So, without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Mr. Menon.
Thank you, Aradhana. Hi, hope you had all good lunch. So the topic of today is increase project metabolism to prevent project failures. You must all be wondering why I'm talking about metabolism. Surely I'm not a doctor, but this particular topic is about how we can increase the speed of execution of projects. This was actually a section in my book, so I thought that it can be expanded so that all of you can benefit from this lecture. So let's move on to slide 2. So I'll be walking basically all of you through the different topics which is mentioned here. One is the common project management mistakes. Another is comparing human body to a project. The third topic is the impact of unnecessary project fat. And I'll be actually explaining you about the different types of fats which can be there in the project and how you actually can reduce those fats to get the maximum metabolism. So there are different types of fats like communication related fat or requirement management related fat or project staffing and allocation related fat or team management or project infrastructure related fat. So we'll be going through each of these areas with some case studies, some examples, so that you can actually relate to those examples and you can learn from it and you can apply it in your office work. Over to the next slides. See, actually, I have actually executed around close to 100 plus projects. So if you look at the real problems, what are the real or common project management mistakes? The first one is about accepting a poorly defined requirements. I'm not telling that the issue is about customer giving you the requirements in one line or something. It is about how you actually accept a poorly defined requirements. How are you asking the right type of questions to understand more about the requirements, or are you accepting changes without negotiating a new timeline? So actually by accepting a poorly defined requirements, you are actually putting the whole team and also the project into danger. The second one is you communicating poorly to either customers or suppliers or team members or your boss or all the stakeholders around you, or you accept a poorly communicated information. If somebody is communicating to you in a way that you are not understanding, or you keep on asking the question, or are you keeping quiet about it? The third point is about not making the right level of noise for lack of availability of skilled team members or accepting incorrect allocation. let us take, you have some resources who are, say, very good in C++. Now you are trying to put them through everything and putting to Java projects. It may be some of the members may not be inclined enough to go to that particular project, or they might have problem to unlearn certain concepts which they have learned in C++ and go to Java. There could be multiple issues like that. So you have to make sure that you are actually putting the right kind of people to the right job allocation. Then ineffective management of team, especially when you have a cross-cultured multi-site team, manage, and how do you communicate with the different teams, taking the right sense to communicate the right time at the right place. So all these things have to be very necessarily taken care when you actually manage the team. Then there is poor planning and underestimation of work. So when you actually plan your work, basically you have to estimate the amount of effort, amount of timeline it takes, the number of resources, the cost, etc. Many times what happens is, due to huge amount of pressure, your work will be underestimated and you will see a lot of surprises happening as you progress along with the work. Then next one is about absorbing delays which are attributable to suppliers or customers. Many times what happens is, your customer also could be your supplier. Let's take a hardware board has to be supplied by your customer. So what happens is, if the customer themselves have made a delay in giving you the hardware board, your software development might get delayed. So sometimes customer also double up as supplier. So you take care, how do you handle such tricky situations? The next one is that you have to achieve a certain target by a certain date, or you have to shrink the timeline by, say, 50% or 100%, even 100%. It may not be rightly possible to actually reduce the amount of timeline. So you have to see whether what you are giving the timeline or effort or the number of resources required or the skill set is really realistic, and whether you can achieve it. The next one is insufficient mitigation of risks. See, sometimes the projects can, if you are not able to unearth the right kind of risk at the start of the project. Many times projects are not allowed to start when you cannot unearth a certain amount of risks. If there is no risk in any project, there is no, it's not really a project. So there will be every project in this world has some amount of risks. The last point is about ineffective escalations. So when you are faced with a problem which is out of your control or not within your control, then you have to escalate to the right stakeholders. This is very important. So these are some of the common project management mistakes which can really happen. It can be a combination of multiple things, or it can be an individual one which is very stronger than the others. Let's move on to this next slide. So I'm here trying to compare the human body to a project. See, there are two people running. One is the current speed at which the project is getting executed. Another one is the required speed of the project. If you look at it, what is metabolism? The process by which the body fat is burned and converted to energy. So you have a lot of fat in your body. What happens is, you cannot run fast, so your project execution speed will be reduced, and you basically require more amount of muscles to run faster for longer time. There is also a thing called project fatigue. In the beginning it might be running well, but towards the end of the project you will have a fatigue, so you will not be able to run fast. Okay. So here what I am trying to bring in is, different parallel activities in the project have to be coordinated well, like what happens in the body. For example, heart has to pump the blood, actually liver has to do its function, kidney has to clean up the blood and then convert it into urine and stuff like that. So each one has its own functionality. So slowdown or dysfunction of any activity can actually affect the health of the person. Similarly, So there are most of the activities, critical activities in the project have to be well coordinated so that there is no dysfunction or project will not slip into ill health. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So this talks about project speed versus the project fat muscle. Okay, there are two curves here. If you look at it, there is one curve which is going upwards exponentially, which talks about the project muscle, and there is another curve which actually talks about the project fat. So if you look at it, the more the project muscle, more will be the speed of the project. But at the same time, the amount of fat, when the muscle increases, the amount of fat is less, so the project speed can be achieved more. And very importantly, the project speed actually depends on the weakest link in the critical path, the fattest. For example, if there are 5 resources who are very weak in a particular skill set, what is very critical for the project, maybe that will be the weakest link in that project. Let us take a project. Let's say a project is like you are having a chariot or you are having a vehicle, you are having different animals connected to that vehicle, let us say. Let's say you have got a horse, you have got an elephant, you have got a pig, you have got maybe a giraffe, or you have got different kind of animals which is pulling a chariot. So what happens to the chariot speed? The chariot speed will be depending on the slowest animal. Or what happens is, if you want to achieve more speed, then maybe the strongest animal has to carry the weakest one. So it's the same way, a strong person in a project may have to help along with doing his work. So help is required to actually speed up the project. Okay, now if you look at what is the impact of an unnecessary project fat in what is the real impact of an unnecessary project fat? So actually, if you have an unnecessary fat, then actually it reduces the execution speed. If the execution speed reduces, what happens? Everybody, the stakeholders will get now reduced. You still have commitments to meet. So what happens is, because of client or delivery pressure, the entire team plus the project manager will go for shortcuts or high risk practices. What happens because of that? It can actually compromise the quality of deliverable. It can even increase the cost. What happens is, if you are giving a less quality deliverable, if the customer try to accept it and it has to be reworked, then overall cost is going to increase because you will have a effort overrun for that. So the whole thing has to be looked at in such a way that the overall speed reduction is an element of balancing both the timeline and the quality of deliverables. It is not a one of the tasks. Okay, basically you have to balance the cost, timeline, and quality. All these 3 factors have to be balanced together. The next slide talks about the elements which actually affects the project speed. The 5 project management elements or the facts which can affect the project speed. One is ineffective project communication, the most important one. So communication is very important. It is better to over communicate rather than not communicate or under communicate, thinking that okay, I will give only this information to this person, I will not give this information to this person, I will have a polarized communication. If you have that kind of an attitude, it's going to be very difficult. Then the next one is, how will you actually deal with a poorly defined requirement? Somebody is telling you in one line what exactly is the requirement, maybe your client, okay? Then how do you handle that situation is very important. It's very likely that many of the clients, because of basically they might themselves don't know how to specify the requirement, might tell the requirements in one line or as a punch line. So how do you handle those situations is what I'm going to talk about in the new slides. So then the third one is ineffective project staffing and allocation. Many times what happens is, when somebody is asking for more resources, the resource manager will go to another team and try to say, oh, please give this resource. Mostly what happens is, in normal situation, the other project manager who is having some resources, he may not actually release best resources. He may release to this manager the resources which he don't want. So what happens is, when you actually look at it, a manager might get a resource which is not really, is really very wasteful resource he might get. So how do you handle this kind of situation is what I'm going to talk about. The fourth one is poor team management. If you have a team, how do you communicate with the team? How do you handle the motivation level of the team? How do you make sure that the team members are happy and motivated and then to deliver the project? The last is the quality of infrastructure and the downtime. For example, if the person is highly energetic, a very brilliant guy, but his PC is very old PC, Pentium 3, which is very less megahertz, and it doesn't have RAM in between, it hangs. It actually has to go for a lot of, I mean, it's like a horse working with a donkey. So it becomes very difficult to achieve the overall speed when you have a difference in speed. Both has to be energetic, both have to have, the machine as well as the human being should have the same kind of speed. Okay, let me get into the first one, the project communication related fat. So on the left side you can see what are the contributors of this fat and how you can really prevent each of the types of fat. Okay, this is all about how the manager or the team lead or the project lead really communicates with the team. So one of the thing is providing only partial information before allocating project tasks to team members. Pruning the information. Some people feel that, okay, I don't have to really give all the information to all the team members, let me prune. Let me take a second paragraph and give to Mr. X. The first paragraph let me give to Mr. Y. So what happens is there is the same amount of information is not available to all the team members. So what happens? How do you really prevent these kind of things? So we have to, as a project manager, we have to set the context. We have to give big picture of the project. What happens in the project? Who is the customer? Who is the customer's customers? What happens if you don't deliver properly? What happens if the timeline is not met? What happens if the quality is less? What is the impact for the company as well as the project? What exactly happens if you don't deliver the right quality? So what is the real impact of this product and whether this product is going to fit in this overall system, how the system works? So you have to give a complete big picture of the product to the entire project team. The second point is about polarized communication. What happens is you have project manager, he has got say 20 members, he will definitely have blue-eyed boys favorite members, favorite team members. So what happens is he go and talk to favorite team members more than other team members. So he will give more and more information to favorite team members and less favorite team members may not get the right amount of information. One is that when there is not much information, your productivity automatically reduces. Okay, and also it can affect motivation. Suppose there is a stepmotherly attitude to a certain member and certain other members you are giving more airtime and more attention. So what is required? How to prevent these kind of things? You have to basically, as managers or leads, you have to maintain neutrality and objectivity in your communication to prevent team members when getting demotivated. Then there is also unnecessary email traffic and ping pong mails between heavyweights. Suppose you have very senior members and heavyweights in the team. So let us take, they are actually fighting over certain issue or certain technical issue and you are a silent spectator to that, then actually it actually brings down, it's kind of fat which actually brings down the productivity of the project. So as project manager, it is not necessary to copy the whole world, okay, when having certain problems being. So what happens is instead of copying the whole world in the email, it is better to go to those two heavyweights and solve the problem by sitting across the table. Sometimes phone and face-to-face communication works much better than in mail communication. Now creating a sense of urgency with over-exaggeration and put undue pressure. Say that CEO is asking for this information or CEO wanting this or giving that kind of a connotation and putting a lot of undue pressure on the team member to create sense of urgency also can reduce a lot of productivity. So this is also, if there is no real pressure, don't put pressure artificially. Put real pressures. If there is a pressure, put it. Otherwise don't put pressure from your pocket and put it. So what happens is, and also when there is real pressure, people who are actually taking risks and delivering things, reward them and also give them some challenging tasks and put pressure. It is not that artificial pressure can be easily made out by team members. Ineffective escalations. What does it mean? Ineffective escalation are certain amount of escalation which you do without having the real clarity of the escalation. What for you are escalating, what type of problem you are trying to solve, who has to actually attend the problem, if the problem is not solved, what is impact. All this information is required in an escalation. What are the suggestions to solve the problem? So all this, when escalation is something you do when certain things are outside your control or you can't do anything. So you have to escalate to some stakeholders, your upper managers, or even to the customers. So basically escalation is an art. So a clear problem statement at the right time basically will be able to solve the problems easily. Many times escalations are very weak or diluted, so the problems will not get solved. And also following up on the escalation is very important. How do you follow up on escalation is very important. Once you escalate, don't forget it. You have to go back and till the problem is solved, you have to follow up the escalation. Then also, when you are likely to get an escalation from somebody from outside, it is better you go and tell your boss in advance. Rather than getting escalation from outside, it is better you go and tell your boss in advance. It's very important. Okay, the next slide. So I've taken a case study for project communication. Okay, this is assumption violation by customer. So let's take, there is a pre-sales proposal. It says hardware will be brought up by the customer by date 1. Actually the project, so it says that in the pre-sales assumption the hardware board will be brought up by the customer on date 1. Sorry, there is some interruption. Okay, now the project just started 1 week before D1. Customer informed they are unable to provide the software but can supply the hardware by date D1. But however, the delivery cannot be delayed as the business consequences are high. What does this mean? See, in the beginning, in the pre-sales, customer says I will deliver hardware to you by date D1. But the customer just before the date, 1 week before the date, says that look, I'm sorry, I cannot deliver this, but however, we have a delivery to make, your software has to be on time. The customer will make unrealistic demands sometime. At the same time, they may not meet their own commitments. So you have to be careful. How do you handle such situation? Because customer also, when customer also become your supplier, how do you really handle the situation is very important. So what are the options before a project manager when such a situation is faced? First option is push your team. Basically push the team to absorb customer delays. What happens? You push so the team and making them to absorb those delays, making them to work on Saturdays, Sundays, weekends, make them stay overnight. All these actually reduce the motivation level. The second option before the manager is to replan and announce a delay. This what happens? In this case, you are telling that customer that look, you have delayed it, so I am going to proportionally delay my deliverable and announce it to customer. The third option is negotiate with the customer that I will still deliver on D1, but what happens is I will deliver with a reduced feature set. Most likely this option might be acceptable to the customer. Let us take I have to deliver 10 features, but the customer actually delayed in giving me the hardware. Now I'll say whichever hardware dependent features I might deliver a little later, maybe in the second sprint or in the second phase of the deliverable. At the same time, I will keep the first date D1 as it is. The customer may love this kind of suggestion. You may take it. So I'm not giving you any direct answers, but at the same time, I'm just explaining you all the options possible in front of you. Depending on the situation and depending on the context, you have to apply the right option. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, now this is another type of fact. How do you handle poorly defined project requirements? Now let us take, just to get the project, okay. just to get the project, the pre-sales would have given some wild assumptions because there is always huge amount of competition. So the pre-sales would have given wild assumptions to get the project win. Now, when the project is won, you will see that wild assumptions which you have made in your proposal is no more valid. So basically, assumption itself is, if you convert that word, it is basically making ass of you and me. So basically, if you have wild assumption, it gets underestimated. When you have underestimation, then you will go for shortcuts to do the project. When you have shortcuts, you will have a lot of quality issues. When you have quality issues, you have to do a lot of rework. When you rework, your cost will increase. When your cost increases, your senior management will become angry. So all these are related to fact. So what is to be done? When somebody is telling you, okay, this is the requirement, what you have to do? What exactly you have to do to manage this? Somebody is telling in one line certain requirements. So make a set of questions to your customer. Ask the right questions at the point of receiving unclear requirement or inputs. At the point of receiving the requirements, you ask those questions. Not afterwards, not after starting the project. When the requirements are getting received, at that time, go through that, or even if it is one-liner, ask a set of questions. Okay? Now you will get a lot of answers. You make the requirement yourself and send it back to customer for approval. Another option is bulletize the requirements into some small sub-features. Okay? For each of the sub-features, assign clarity and complexity factors. For example, if you give clarity and complexity factors, what is the clarity of that requirement? What is the complexity factor of that requirement? Okay? Then what happens is you can actually take up the high clarity and high complexity requirement for your analysis. Okay? Then you take up the clear, most wanted and complex requirements. So the requirements are clear, they are most wanted by the customer, and they are complex to implement. Take them first and execute it. This is a good way to handle, how do you handle a poorly defined requirements. Now then what happens is, what happens to the unclear requirement? Now you have handled only the clear, most wanted and complex. What happens to unclear requirement? Package each unclear requirement with re-estimate gates. So you say that this is unclear because of these reasons. So go back to the customer's door and knock at the customer's door to find out whether you can get it clarity, or you can propose certain requirements back to the customer and get it approved. This is the way how you basically convert an unclear requirement and then get back to clarity. Sorry, there are a lot of interruptions, but at the same time I want to make sure that my audio is not interrupted. The next one. There is a case study here. I am talking about project requirement management. So this is how actually we can manage the requirement management related fact. Let's take a project kicked off with punchline unfrozen requirements. For example, they say, okay, this is my requirements, please do this. It's only one-liner. Okay, so customer informed the requirements need to evolve over a period as it is first of its kind product. So when the supplier went and asked, you ask, basically you as a manager ask the customer, see, you are already giving me only one-liners. The customer gives an answer that, look, this is a first of its kind product, we ourselves are evolving. So when you actually start executing the project, I will give you more and more requirements. This is a very dangerous situation. So customer actually convince you to sign the project as a fixed cost project. Let's take it's a fixed cost project, saying that this is basically very strategic, of great strategic importance and economic importance to them. So you better accept this as a fixed cost, because supplier accepted it, you started execution. During the execution time, the requirement creeps. Actually there are a lot of surprises and creeps resulting into the project, actually, which is actually affecting the timeline. So how a PM should handle this fixed cost project, okay, without antagonizing the customer, without making the customer unhappy? How do you handle? That's a tricky one. So what you have to do is, you have to put re-estimation gates in the project plan after each proof of concept of first of its kind requirement. Let us take a first of its kind requirement is not known to the customer or to you. Okay. Now what is happening is some of the requirements have to be tried and proof of concept has to be established. So which actually requires a lot of time to establish proof of concept. So put those re-estimation gates for replanning for each of the proof of concept. Now the question is, since it is a fixed cost, how do you handle this? You have to actually say that for each of these proof of concept, if it fails, then we have to have a change request separately where we will handle the effort or timeline or cost estimate separately. Another option is go for time and material business model. So it's very easy. Depending on when there is a proof of concept which is actually failing, you can go for time and material model. Okay, now what are the types of facts which can actually result in project staffing and allocation? Okay, sorry, there is some interruption here. I'm just waiting for the slide to come up. Okay, I hope you can see that. Now project staffing and allocation related fact is basically how do you allocate the right person to the right kind of work with the right motivation level. Okay, first is about recruiting candidates. Okay, recruiting borderline candidates under pressure, because there's a lot of pressure for you to recruit candidates because customer is waiting, you don't have right kind of resource, so you have to go to the market and recruit the resources. Now there's a lot of pressure on you to recruit. So what happens is in interview you'll ask some questions, say 5 questions are answered, 5 questions doesn't get answered properly, so you are not sure whether to take that person or not, but finally you took the person. It is better to reject a border candidate than simply recruiting them. What happens is accepting those kind of candidates actually will affect the existing team members' morale. And also it is better if questions are not getting answered, then it is another way to assess the candidate is by asking certain new areas which you don't know whether he is able to grasp the question itself. Some candidates I have seen that they are not able to even grasp the question itself in the interviewer, or they might use some jargons to answer it. So the jargons are used to confuse the interviewer. Both the candidate and the interviewer will not know what exactly it is. So I mean, so there are many ways. Even the candidate can confuse the interviewer taking it around the world, or the interviewer may not be able to assess the candidate in the right way, or he is not coming into the area where he wants the candidate to come in. So he might take the interviewer around the world and then answer the questions in a different way. So you have to avoid all those as a smart interviewer. Now having interviewed and taken the person, a high potential engineer, for example, let us take a high potential engineer is taken and given manual testing work. Okay, so you did not ask him what is your interest, how you are. So he's a high potential engineer. Let me put simply allocate that engineer to a repetitive testing kind of work. So what happens? Sometimes if you don't ask the real opinion or the interest of the candidate and simply push the team member into the job, then it is like asking an elephant to kick a tennis ball. What happens is he's having so much potential that you are asking him to do a small work which he may not like it. So, and also the reverse is also true. Some low capable people are taken and then you are given some big kind of work where they have to think and design and do something. So it is basically like asking frogs to fly. So some frogs cannot fly. You have to actually match the capability of the person with the work getting allocated. Inefficient team mix. What does it mean? Inefficient or ineffective team mix. What happens is you have a lot of juniors in the team, and what happens is there is no real mentorship there. So to get a real good project mix, you should have at least 1 senior member for 7 juniors. So 1:7 ratio actually works extremely well. Okay, you have to get this ratio. Otherwise, what happens is it will be like headless chickens. So they may be misguided, or they may not be guided properly. Okay, they may not have any directions, and they will make a lot of mistakes, and there will be a lot of time to take the correction for the mistakes. The other one is talking parrots. What does it mean, talking parrot? There are many team members in the team who just talk. They will talk big things, but when it comes to really execution, they are very poor. Okay, they might be very good in English, they would have been convent educated, they may not be from a village, they will have been urban brought up, but they will be talking extremely well. They will only do lip service, but not real service. So you have to basically convert these talking parrots to working mode. If they are not changing, then you have to take punitive actions. And also one more thing is ornamental or decorative roles in a project. Simply having one role without having proper idea what he is trying to do in that project role. So just because he is in the company for 10 years, 15 years, everybody love him or everybody like him, you cannot put a person there in the project without having a proper role. So these ornamental or decorative roles in the project is a fat. So you should take it out. The next one. So I'm waiting for the slide to come up. I think there's some problem with the slide. Okay. Now this is a case study about resource management. How do you actually, so let us take a PM allocated multiple tasks. Okay, multiple tasks from 4 different projects to an architect. He's a subject matter expert. So, but he's, I mean, his knowledge levels are very high. So he's like a hotspot, technical hotspot. So multiple tasks from different projects have been allocated to this subject matter experts, basically due to shortage of experts. And another one is unable to resist the delivery pressure or to please superiors. What happens is when you are having multiple different tasks of different projects given to a single person, it's very difficult to switch. It is very difficult for a technical person to switch tasks. So you have to make an operation and break an operation. You have to break and make. A lot of break-make operations have to be done. This actually affects the productivity of a technical person. See, managers can do multiple tasks because they are not doing it. Their team members are doing it. So they can do multitasking. But for a technical team member, it is extremely difficult to switch different tasks. So in this particular case, the paper tiger plan has failed because of all 4 projects, the different tasks which has been allocated to this particular architect or subject matter expert, it actually resulted in big rework. Okay. So the key learning here is the multitasking and task switching is very unproductive, especially for technical people. So this is basically another kind of fat which is introduced by project management people only or project managers only. So this should be avoided. People think that, okay, he is a great guy, let me put him in 10 tasks. All 10 tasks will get screwed up. And some people, some architects which are smart, they will say that, look, I have more things on my plate, I cannot do this. But there are some very nice people, they will take all the things in their plate, but they cannot eat it. So they will spoil their stomach as well as they will spoil the food or they will waste the food. Okay, so what is the key learning? Say no to the stakeholders, but with the right reasons. How to say no? But you have to always add a no with the right reasons and resist pressure. The art of resisting pressure is very important. Maybe there is a pressure from your customer, there's a pressure from your senior managers, there's pressure all over. How do you handle pressure and how do you resist pressure is very important. And one more thing is frequently shuffling technical people from one task to another. Okay, you do this task now, next half an hour you do that task, then you go to that project and do this. It's very, very, it's a huge fat in a project. Okay. So multiple projects, multiple tasks for key team members is not really advised. Now, next one is about key team management related fat. Okay. How do you handle, this is all about how do you handle your team. The contributors of fat is poke on weaknesses and not encourage the strength of the team members. What happens is you poke the weakness. Many managers are interested in just poking the weaknesses of the team members. Hey, you are not good in this, you are not good in that, you are not good in this one. So when you start poking the weakness, that will induce a productivity loss or demotivation in the team members. Instead, work on the strength of the person. Say that you are really good in making documents or really good in observation. Why don't you do testing? He will get motivated to do that work. At the same time, he will do in flying colors. So person and underplay the weakness. If you always spoke on the weakness, the guy may not be able to give their 100%. Go behind small flies and leave the big fish. When you are having a huge project plan, and if you have got a critical path in that, go behind the critical path, which actually are very, weak tasks, which can actually affect the overall project duration of the project. Don't go behind why the bus is not coming, why the team members are, don't go behind those kind of tasks which actually don't affect the timeline of the project. Go to some critical task which can actually affect the duration of the project. Don't follow up on low value activities. Low value added activities don't follow up. High value added activities, recognize those and follow up those activities. Leave the low value added activities in autopilot mode. It will work by itself. Don't go behind the low value added activities. This is very important. Then PM's project tracking style. When you give a work to some person, he says that 5 days it takes to complete the work. Every day evening you go and ask what happened, you will get irritated. What you can do is at least, okay, if you want to really follow up on the 4th day evening, you can go and ask, are you going to complete tomorrow? So the micromanagement style may not be liked by multiple people. And also when you are actually tracking, you should know how to ask questions. Is he bluffing with you? Will you allow team members to bluff with you and get away with it? Or are you able to ask the right questions to the team members and find out the technical loopholes and then help him? Okay. So we should be able to challenge the team members to increase the performance bar. It's very important. The last one in the team management is politics between team members. One is seniors not sharing the information. People have hero cultures. There are certain heroes in the culture, like the cowboys. Okay, they will shoot. Okay, so discourage the cowboy culture in the team. Don't create heroes in the team. Create like the Aam Aadmi Party now, right? Create the Aam team member culture. Everybody is equal kind of thing. So if you create that kind of a culture, it is easy don't create heroes within the team. It becomes difficult when you manage. But at the same time, at the time of performance appraisal, of course you have to give high performers higher hike. But when you handle or when you treat a team, don't show the difference. Don't show the difference while treating team members. But when you are giving some hike, you have to show the difference. High performers should be given more hike. Stars should be treated differently. But when you treat the team members, don't treat them differently. A star and a high performer and low performer, don't treat them differently. It's difficult. Okay. And also when seniors are not really sharing the information, then you have to set a KRA, key result area, that you have to create a successor for you. Then only your promotion or your increment or your salary hike will be. So what happens is he will be forced to give information and create a successor for him. Otherwise he will hold all the information and becomes a problem for the organization. It's called technical hotspot. So it becomes a problem for the organization to have. Okay. So let me take some case studies of team management. So a manager pressurizes and reduces the estimated time by creating sense of urgency. So what happens is the overall project time, somehow you reduce the time. So team member, so when you put too much pressure, what happens is the team member will finish the whole work with reduced time. When you finish a work with a reduced time under pressure, what happens? The quality will be so less. So it is like telling, no, the coconut tree, actually the coconut tree, if you plant a coconut tree, it definitely takes 2.5 years to get coconut. Suppose you plant the coconut tree and ask that after 1 year coconut is required, it will give only, it cannot give it. So you have to say that you have to wait certain tasks, you have to wait for certain time. You can't hurry up certain things. So actually hurry will spoil the curry. So hurry can get you into more worries. So don't hurry up on certain things which cannot be hurried. Okay. So another example scenario is team member whom you thought very highly contribute to, or very high hero has actually disappointed you. Sometimes what happens is you think that, okay, this guy is a great guy, let me just give the work to him and don't track him. Sometimes what happens is even high performers require some kind of tracking. If you leave a high performer in autopilot mode, some of them may work, give the deliverable, but some of them might require. So you have to do based on the context or based on the history. So basically it's a good idea to objectively track all team members, including high performers. Okay. The next one. This is regarding a case study on project tracking. Let us take there was a project which has got about 15 tasks, okay, between March 2nd and March 27th. So there is totally 55 tasks in the project. Okay, between March 2nd and March 27th there are 15 tasks. So there are total 55 tasks in the project. There are 15 tasks between March 2nd and March 27th. On March 15th you found that 10 tasks are delayed out of the 15. Okay, there are 15 tasks between March 2nd and 27th. On March 15th you figured out, actually by grilling or by talking to the team members, that out of the 15 tasks, 10 tasks are delayed. And this was found only on March 15th. March 27th is for the finishing of all these tasks, out of which 6 of them are in the critical path. Out of the 10 tasks delayed, 6 of the tasks are in the critical path. Okay, and another issue is 3 of them of the tasks in the critical path are done by relatively fresh people or relatively weak team members. How do you handle such a situation? It's a very difficult situation to handle. You have some tasks which is already delayed, and some of those tasks are already in critical path, and some of those tasks in their critical path is handled by weak team members. So it's a very difficult situation. How do you handle? So first we have to ask ourselves a question, why the delay was known to the project manager only after 13 days. March 2nd it started, but only on March 15th the PM come to know about the delay. So it's very important to have such a, if there is too much pressure, it is better to have a scrum meeting or stand-up meeting where you can simply ask the status every day. So basically in a scrum meeting you will ask, what are the tasks you have done today? By asking these 3 questions in Scrum, you will come to know what are the issues the team members are facing. First of all, you should create an open culture where every team member is able to open up and tell the truth, tell honestly, fearlessly. That culture has to be created. Okay, the second possible solution is what you do as a PM. Use strong team members from non-critical path. So you have some strong team members outside critical path. Use those team members and bring it back to the critical path to recover from the situation. The last option is negotiate with customer to deliver reduce feature test. So reduce feature set actually. So if you don't have any choice, you have to do, but don't tell on March 27th that I'm going to get a delay. So you are going to get a delay in your deliverable. But it is better to inform the customer in advance. Give an advance warning, look, we have an internal issue, we want to solve it, but your present delivery of 27th is going to get delayed, sorry for it, we will try to recover from this delay as fast as possible. It is better to tell it in advance rather than telling the customer on 27th and giving him a negative surprise. Now the last one is project infrastructure related fact. What is the infrastructure? Many times projects are having great team members, let's say, but the infrastructure associated with the project, maybe the machines, the software, it may not be good enough. It may be substandard. Okay. So some organization will try to save the penny, but they will lose pound. What happens is when you are having a team member who is extremely good and is sitting in front of a PC, it takes about 1 hour to compile a code. What is the overall productivity? It is called integrated productivity. Productivity of the machine plus the human being. integrated productivity is going to be extremely less. Okay, and also what happens is if you give this and you give the software for compilation, you have to, the team member has to do babysitting in front of the machine till the compilation gets over. So this takes about 45 minutes or 1 hour to compile. So you are wasting your time. And one more thing, improper tools. You are using some tools. Tools itself have bugs. So you will see your bug in the code, or you will see the tool bug. What bug? So first you have to find out the bug in the tool and try to get it solved by the tool vendor, then use the tool. So you have to be very careful in selection of the tool. You have to use the right tool for the right kind of solution. And basically UI based and command line based, ease of use of the tools is very important. Many times you say command line based tools, productivity is reduced. So UI based, there should be ease of use and there will be a high amount of user interface. It should be very easy to use. So right tool set has to be used. So, and also you have to evaluate the tool set before purchasing. So you take a evaluation copy, evaluate it, ask multiple people to use it, and then everybody is happy, or ask if there are issues or clarification, get it clarified from the tool vendor, then only do it. Okay, when you are given a substandard infrastructure, what will you do? You have to really escalate. You say that this kind of infrastructure cannot work for this kind of project. If you are giving this kind of infrastructure, then the project timeline, the quality or the effort is going to be this much. So have an impact, give an impact of what happens if you use this kind of infrastructure. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so there are two kinds of things. Overall, I want to summarize in this slide what exactly are the two things which can do to reduce the fat. Sorry, I think we are having some problem with the slide. I'm just waiting for the slide to appear. Right. So reduce fast. There are two aspects to it. How can you reduce fat? You can either do exercise or you can do fasting. Right? What are the activities of the project which are actually equal to exercise? For example, you have to conduct risk management workshop. It's an exercise for the project. So a proper risk management workshop is a good exercise for the project. Brainstorming sessions for the project. Conduct requirement management workshops is a good thing. Okay. So there are multiple things you can do as exercise in a project. So what is fasting? Loading experts with more work. If you have an expert in the work, you actually load him with more work. It's actually equivalent to fasting. Okay, the next one is allocating an average member with a complex work. That is also equivalent to fasting. Not deploying the right tracking method to spot bottlenecks in the critical path. So if you don't have the right tool to spot the bottlenecks, maybe some people are using Excel sheet to plan, some people are using Microsoft Project, some people are using some other tool. It doesn't matter what the tool is. Do you have the right method to find out what is in the critical path? If you are not spotting the critical path, what happens is you might even concentrate on non-critical path, which is actually not affecting the project duration. Working with unfrozen and ambiguous spec. So you are actually working with an unambiguous, you are actually supposed to work with an unambiguous spec, but you are actually working with an unfrozen and ambiguous spec without identifying the gray areas. If you are not able to identify the gray areas, then it is going to be a big problem. So if you look at it, you should not do fasting, but at the same time you should do exercise. You should eat well. Like the human body, you should eat well and also do the right kind of exercise. So both you have to do simultaneously actually to reduce the project fat and increase the project metabolism. Once you are able to increase the project metabolism, then you will be able to run the project at much faster pace. Okay. So next is about this, the whole topic has been taken from my book, and this is a small snapshot of my book. So this book, it talks about how do you handle the team members around you, how do you handle the customers, how do you handle the suppliers, how do you handle your boss, your boss's boss, what are the different kinds of bosses available in the organization, what are the different types of different traits of the boss, what kind of bosses exist. So all these are handled in this book so that you can read it and you can say how do you handle your career in the IT industry. It's very important to handle your career. Performance alone is not enough nowadays. You have to also handle the perception. Performance and perception, both are very important. So how do you handle perception? Your perception in the organization is this. And there is a section in this book called speed of execution of projects. So how do you actually increase the speed of execution of projects is a section. So that section I have converted to this presentation. And you can visit this website if you want. And thank you very much. Aradhana?
Thank you, Mr. Menon, for this insightful presentation.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Aradhana.
Yes. Now let's quickly take up the questions. I request you to read out the questions and their answers so that all our users may listen to the insights.
Okay. I'm just looking at the questions. There are many questions here. So first question, how to handle obvious on the project, example lack of skills. Okay, there is a question being asked, how to handle obvious things in the project, for example lack of skills. So it's a good question. So when you actually start the project, there could be many members who are having lack of skills or having semi-skilled. Okay, they might be having little bit of knowledge. So it's very important to have some members who are strong, or you have to get an external project. And also training is not just a classroom training itself. You have to also give hands-ons. You have to give actually a piece of the project, little bit to execute, and see how the people are actually going through that routine and going through that one and coming out in colorful. So actually you have to see how many members actually ramp up fast. So ramping up is also very important. It is not just the recruitment or getting resources. Ramping up is also a big activity. Okay. Let me go to the next question. What happens if boss does not give enough time to listen? It's a good question. Yes, bosses are always having lack of time. How do you get the attention span from boss? It's a very difficult topic. So now it's very important that you have to closely watch the biological clock, how the boss handles the whole thing. Okay, when he comes, when he is free, what time he is actually available. All these you have to observe very carefully when you are in the office. Okay, it's very important to note when he is really available. Maybe you can take out your time and go along with him for lunch, or when he is free you can get into his room and ask. Okay, it's very important to find out the time availability, first thing. Second thing is, many times you might be barging into a room when he is in a conference call or you will with somebody, or maybe he is very busy. So you have to understand which time of the day he will be free. That is very important point. The second one is how much time you are going to take. So you have to prepare a little bit. What are you going to ask? How do you handle the situation? Maybe you and boss having a different kind of opinion. He is not accepting your point. So how do you really convince the boss? So then what you have to do is to convince the boss is take a stand from boss point of view. Let us take boss is telling just opposite view of yours. How do you handle? You assume, you go to boss and present that if you take your position and simulate the situation when you handle that particular incident or particular situation, when you actually use boss's opinion, what will happen to the customer, what will happen to timeline, what will happen to delivery, what will happen to the organization, or whatever is the consequence. Explain him the consequence and make him understand the consequence of using that. So many times what happens is many bosses will listen to cost aspects very easily. Many bosses will listen to if there is somebody resigning, or many bosses will listen to when there is, when there is a huge timeline impact. Many bosses will listen when there is a customer escalation. So you have to use all these facts that if you don't do this now, then these are the potential things which can happen. So you have to give your explanation in such a way, you have to give the impact. If you don't do this, this is going to be the impact. Definitely you will get the attention span of many of the bosses. Thank you. Next one, is it not better for the project manager to be part of procurement process pre-sales so that he doesn't have surprises like later in the project? Excellent question. Now what happens is, pre-sales will be a team. The project members or project manager will not be in the picture at all in the beginning. The project manager will be away, and what happens is he might be in some other project, so he will be pulled out of that project to manage this project. What happens is there will be certain set of members who will work very closely with pre-sales team members. So the pre-sales team and the project management team could be completely different because of various practical reasons, operational reasons, logistic reasons, whatever be the reason. Now what happens is, when a pre-sales team actually gives an estimate to win a project, it need not necessarily be certified or accepted by the project team formed by the project manager. Now what we can do, you already given, let us take the pre-sales team has given 6 months, say and also say that it requires 5 team members, 6 team members for so much time. So this has been already been agreed. Now what you can do actually is, within your team you can do a re-estimate and go back. Look, you have estimated at that point of time, you had so much information, okay, you could not have, now I have more clarity about the project, I have more clarity about the requirements. Actually you require to the management and tell that this requires 4 or 5 members more, or it requires so much time more. So you have to convince. And then what happens is, this always happens because in pre-sales there is a commercial element, there is an element to win the project. Okay, sometimes you might have to hype up certain things, you might have to camouflage certain things, you might have to promise the moon to get the project, we don't know. There could be certain things. So there could be certain hype up things which would have happened in a pre-sales which may not be the case when you really execute the project. So it depends on the smartness of the project manager in the beginning while taking over the project, what kind of estimate he does, what kind of escalation he does to the senior management, how do you handle the situation. The next question. In the graph you showed fat versus muscle, it seems to me like a point where fat is more than muscle, the velocity of the project is same as the muscle is more than. Can you explain the graph again please? Okay. See, the graph actually is a conceptual graph. Okay, these are all virtual fat. These are not real fats as the fats in the human body of. So these are virtual fat in the project. It can be, as I've told, the fat can be related to requirement, fat can be related to team management, fat can be related to infrastructure. Now what happens is, when this amount of fat increases, okay, the project velocity actually reduces. So actually it is a 2 exponential curve in the opposite direction. The different parabolic shapes are different. So of course I will be able to show it again, the graph maybe a later point of time if I have time. The next question. In the design phase, sorry, from where do I start making project documentation? Can you place the hierarchy of project design like flowchart, DFD, SRS document, etc.? Okay, can you please let me know the hierarchy of project design? In the design phase, from where do I start making project documentation? Yes, it's a good question. So you have a project phase. When do you start making documentation of the project? See, actually, I actually hate the word documentation because documentation actually de-link the execution. Documentation should be part of the implementation. So when you actually design, what is design? Design is a thinking process. How to solve the problem. You are given requirement. Requirement is all about what to do. Design is about how to do. Thinking about how to do. So you have to think how to do. You have to list down how to do it. So who is the biggest beneficiary of a design? It is the implementer. It is the person who is implementing will actually help a lot in the design phase. So when the designer and the implementer are 2 different people, it is 100% required to document. Even if they are same, for knowledge management purpose, it is important to document the design, and it should be concurrent. There should not be a separate phase called documentation. You never should make a phase called documentation. Now people see a documentation as a separate phase. People think that technical writers are required to do it. So I mean, it enters into a different dimension. You have to mix the design work, thinking, and writing work together. So it should not be separated at all. The person who thinks and write down how to do should also document. What's the problem? You cannot get a technical writer to do it. He should do it by himself. In case there are multiple ways technical writers can do. Big companies, what they do is the designer can actually talk into some audio, and the audio tape can be given to the technical writer, and he or she can write it if we want to really save the time. There are multiple ways to reduce the time. Next one. How does a candidate with good capability respond to such a situation? Okay, question. How does a candidate, question, some fat is necessary in the body, so it doesn't apply to projects as well. Of course, there are certain fat required in the body. That is why if you look at my graph, the fat is not zero. There is certain amount of fat required. Definitely fat is required. It is not, I am not talking about zero size projects. I am talking about there is certain amount of fat definitely required. Even in my graph in the presentation, I told that fat is not zero. There is certain amount of fat required. Those fat actually glue the body together. Similarly, the different functions are glued together by the fat in the body. Of course, there is bad fat and good fat. Good fat is actually required in the body. Okay. The next one. In staffing a project, when a talking parrot kind of candidate was selected, when needed, we can shuffle again the team and select some other suitable candidate. Okay. He's asking if you found while during execution you found a talking a talking parrot, when do you shuffle the team member and take another team member? See, this is a tricky situation. See, when you are actually, somebody is giving you team members, what do? You have, it is required for a project manager to filter the team member, talk to them and understand. And maybe talk to them a little bit, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, understand his interest. And you should be able to, even though you are not telling him that it is an interview, you are actually trying to figure out what is that person all about. So by actually talking to him, you should be able to make out whether he's a talking parrot or something. So it is like a judgmental decision you have to take while actually inducting team members into your project. See, once you start the project, let's say you have started the project 6 months, and after 3 months you realize that he is a talking parrot, it might be a little bit difficult to exchange a team member with another team member, and I mean it's a bit difficult, but you can still do it by escalation and going to your resource manager and getting another team member. But the best preventive action is to actually, from wherever the team members are coming, it is better to actually talk to them before induction is being done. Okay, the next one. If you have a requirement of 10 resources in my team, but only 6 are available, the required skill set, it is better to accept less or non-skilled people for the remaining 4, or try to manage with 6 resources who have the right skills. It's a good question. The question is all about, I require 10 members, but I have only 6 members with the right skill set. That means 60% of your team composition knows the skill. It's a great thing. Many times we might have to start with no skill sets. So if you have 60% members who are having already right skills, only the 40% members have to be ramped up. So you have to put like one member who is having a skill as a buddy to another member. So 4 team members, just take the best 4 from the 6 and put the other 4 as a buddies. So they will learn from each other. Okay, these buddies can be put to the strongest team members. So it's a very easy situation. Let us take a worst case scenario where you are having team members, only one team member know the skill, the others. So you have to have a rapid fire training program where you have to induct or inject a lot of training into them. The next question. When you take a fixed price contract, won't the changes be taken as change request and additional cost would be really a customer go for fixed cost project? Okay, the customer will go for a fixed cost project when actually he has a budget constraint. Okay, he don't want to overspend, and he also get a somehow he can also get into some change request. See, there are multiple things in change request. Okay, one is small changes. If you get small changes, you will think that okay, I can do it in half an hour, 1 hour, half a day. You might even accept it because you want to be seen as flexible to your customer. How do you handle those small change requests? It's a very tricky situation. The customers nowadays, most of the customers go for fixed cost project because there is all round constraint on the budget. When you have time and material, it is like a very elastic. So you have more time and more resources, you get paid more. So many customers from time and material model is going to fixed cost model to limit the budget available to execute the projects. So it's basically an economic decision, I would say. The next question. Can anyone estimate accurately in a project by visualizing all scenarios, risks, etc.? If no, what are the skills required to improve estimations? Nobody can estimate accurately in the world. Estimate itself, the word, the meaning of the estimate is inaccurate. But we can tell that estimation accuracy how to improve. What does it mean? Your actual will be always different from the estimate. The best projects which has been estimated are already having 10 to 15% variation, the best projects. You can't have an estimate which is 100. Now the question is, it's impossible to visualize all the scenarios, risks. But that is why a risk management workshop, it should not be a one-time affair. It should be done continuously. For example, if you have 5 phases, are you doing key learnings exercise after each phase? Are you doing risk workshop after each phase? Are you doing requirement workshop after each phase before the next phase? People, what happens is project managers think that if I conduct requirement workshop, risk management workshop in the beginning of the project, everything is done. No. Risk management workshop is a live thing. It should be repeated in the project. So with this risk management, with this requirement workshop, if there are additional things which has come out, at least unearth the hidden effort. If you can unearth the problem, hidden effort, it can actually solve the problem. A risk which actually is visualized is half solved. If a risk cannot be visualized, it cannot be solved. Okay,
Mr.
what are
Menon,
the skills required to
can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Due to time constraint, I request you to take the unanswered questions offline now, which I will share with you through email. So if you would like to summarize for today's session, you can do it now, and then we can close this session for today.
Okay. Overall, it was very good. I mean, the questions are really deep enough, good enough questions. I mean, thank you all for attending my presentation. It was very nice. Of course, I could not interact on a live basis, but at the same time, the questions are very ample proof that you are listening in spite of having some interruptions in the presentation. Thank you very much, and thank you for the moderation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Menon, for conducting this wonderful webinar today. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for their continuous support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us today. Again, thanks again, Mr. Menon, for having TechGig as a moderator. Have a great evening ahead.
Thank you.